The night was long, but I did not weep anymore. My tears had already carved their rivers. Now, only quiet remained. I sat by the window, watching the moon spill silver light across the floor. The toy box rested on its shelf, holding its secret sweets gone stale, toys untouched, and a letter waiting like a seed buried in the soil of time. I pressed my palms together and whispered, "Perhaps they will never open it. Perhaps I will never hear their laughter again. But my love has been planted, and one day, love always finds a way to bloom." I rose and stood before the mirror. My face stared back, lined, tired, worn. This was the face my son no longer welcomed, the face my daughter-in-law despised. But as I traced each wrinkle with my fingertips, I felt no shame. "These are not marks of backwardness," I whispered. "These are medals of survival, proof that I endured hunger, storms, loss, and loneliness, proof that I raised a child from nothing and gave him everything." They could call me outdated, they could call me unnecessary, but they could never erase the truth written on my skin. If you believe every mother and grandmother deserves respect, press like, share this story, and comment respect. Let us honor the roots that carry every family. As dawn painted the sky pale, I folded my shawl neatly and sat back in my chair. I no longer waited for footsteps that would not come. Instead, I held on to dignity, the only gift no one could take from me. I whispered one final truth. They may lock their doors against me, they may hide me from their children, but they cannot lock me out of the hearts I once carried inside mine. I am their beginning, their foundation, their root, and roots, even when buried, never disappear. The toy box rested quietly on the shelf, but my heart still ached with words unsaid. Love left unspoken is heavier than silence, and mine had grown too heavy to bear. That evening, I pulled my diary toward me. I tore out a clean sheet of paper, dipped my pen in ink, and began to write, not for myself, but for the little ones who could no longer sit in my lap. My dear grandchildren, I don't know when you will read this, or if you ever will, but I must write to you, because my heart is full of love that has nowhere to go. I was there when you took your first steps, when your tiny hands first wrapped around my finger. I told you stories by the lamp, stories my own mother told me, stories filled with courage, kindness, and hope. But now, I am told not to come to you. I am told, my face, my words, my love, are no longer wanted. Yet I want you to know this: nothing, not distance, not silence, not even time can erase a grandmother's love. Tears blurred the ink, but I kept writing. I saved toys for you, sweets for you, blessings for you. If you ever wonder who loved you without asking for anything in return, remember me. The world may call me old-fashioned, they may hide me from your eyes, but the roots of your life grew in the soil of my love. And roots never die, even if they are buried deep. I folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it into the toy box. It lay there among the dolls and cars, waiting like a silent heartbeat for the day little hands might open it. If you believe grandchildren should always know their grandmother's love, please comment respect below. Let's honor the unseen love of forgotten mothers. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but lighter. The words I could not speak aloud now lived in ink. My love had a voice again. I whispered into the quiet room. One day, when they are older, when they ask about me, this letter will speak for me, and they will know I was never far from them. I lived in every prayer I whispered, every toy I saved, every story I wanted to tell. I thought silence would be the end of my story, but my letter had given me one last way to be heard. The next morning, I opened the toy box again. The bright colors of the dolls and cars stared back at me, untouched, silent. My fingers traced the ribbons I had tied so carefully, as if they could still carry the warmth of my hope. I lifted one small wooden toy car and held it close. Your tiny hands should have pushed this across the floor, I whispered. Your laughter should have filled this room. But instead, it was my tears that wet the wheels. One by one, I touched each toy, each sweet, as though blessing them. I wrapped them carefully in cloth and placed them gently back in the box. Then I tied the lid with string, firm and neat, as though sealing my love inside for a day yet to come. I whispered, if not today, then someday. If not in my arms, then in your memories. You will know your grandmother loved you. I placed the box on the highest shelf, where dust could not easily reach it. Every time I looked at it, I wanted to believe it was not a box of rejection, but a treasure chest of love waiting to be claimed. If you believe every child deserves to know their grandmother's love, please share this video. Let's remind the world that love cannot be silenced. That night, I sat in my chair, gazing at the shelf. The toy box seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight. I thought of the day my grandchildren would grow old enough to ask questions. Questions their parents could not answer with lies. Where is Dottie? Who fed me sweets when I was small? Who told me the bedtime stories I faintly remember? And when they searched, perhaps they would find me. If not in body, then in the box I left behind. I pressed my palms together and whispered, love does not disappear. It waits. Even if they hide me, my love will one day find them. I thought the toy box was an end, but it was not an ending. It was my promise. The days that followed grew long and empty. Each morning, I sat by the door, waiting. Each afternoon, I listened for the sound of little feet running toward me. Each evening, I lit the lamp, hoping their laughter would spill into my room. But no one came. The toys sat neatly in their box, untouched. The sweets I had bought with my meager savings grew stale, their sweetness fading into silence. My chair became a prison, holding me still as hope slipped away. I whispered to myself, perhaps tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went, and still no knock, no voices, no smiles. The silence of absence is louder than any noise. I looked at the window where sunlight once danced when my grandchildren visited. Now, only shadows stretched across the floor. The walls echoed not with giggles, but with the ticking of a lonely clock. One evening, I prepared bowls of kia, sweet and warm, the way they liked it. I placed the bowls on the table, waiting for small hands to reach out. Hours passed. The bowls grew cold. At last, I poured the untouched kheer down the drain, my tears mixing with the milk. If you believe no grandmother should ever wait in vain for the love of her grandchildren, please like this video. Let's stand together for forgotten mothers. That night, I sat in the dark, clutching the toy box to my chest. I whispered, do they even remember me? Or has she erased me from their hearts already? I remembered how, when they were younger, my grandchildren would cling to me, begging for one more story, one more sweet, one more hug before sleep. Their eyes had sparkled with love. Could love fade so quickly? Could it be buried under her words? I thought distance would only dull the visits. But now, I realized I had been erased from their daily lives. A few days later, I tried again. This time, I told myself I would not stay long, just enough to kiss their little faces, to see them smile. My heart ached too much to stay away. But when the door opened, it wasn't my son who stood there. It was my daughter-in-law. She looked me up and down, her expression tight. Before I could even speak, she said, Ma, please don't come anymore. I told him already. You spoil the children. Her words stung. Spoil them? How? I asked softly. She folded her arms, her bangles clinking. With your old stories, your endless warnings, your superstitions, you confuse them. They don't need all that. They need to grow up modern, strong, independent, not stuck in your backward ways. Backward, the word cut deeper than any blade. I steadied my trembling voice. I only told them to respect, to be kind, to pray, to remember family. Are these backward? She shrugged. Maybe not for your time, but now, things are different. You had your chance to raise children. Let us raise ours our way. Her tone was sharp, her eyes unyielding. In that moment, I understood this wasn't just about sweets or stories. This was about erasing me entirely. I was no longer a grandmother in her eyes. I was an obstacle. Asterisk, if you believe no grandmother should ever be treated as a burden, please subscribe. Let us give dignity back to forgotten mothers. I turned to leave, but my legs felt heavy, like stone. On the street outside, children ran past, laughing, carrying kites and marbles. My eyes filled with tears as I imagined my own grandchildren among them, laughing, playing, growing, but without me in their world. I walked back to my house, where the toys still sat waiting, untouched. I placed them gently into a box, as though tucking them into sleep. My voice cracked as I whispered, you may call me backward, but one day, these little ones will search for the arms that truly held them. I thought being called outdated was cruel, but being called harmful to the children I loved was unbearable. The next day, I gathered my courage and went again, not with sweets, not with toys, but only with the hope of seeing my grandchildren's faces. My heart told me, surely, he didn't mean it. Surely, love is stronger than a single sentence. But when he opened the door, his face was harder than before. Ma, he said, lowering his voice, I told you already, don't come here. My wife doesn't like it. She says your old ways aren't good for the children. I stood frozen. Old ways, I whispered. He nodded impatiently. Yes, the stories you tell, the things you teach, they're not modern. The kids don't need to grow up with those ideas. It will hold them back. She wants them raised differently. My breath caught in my chest. old ways. The very lessons that had carried him through hunger and storms. The very lullabies that had soothed his fever. The prayers that had guarded his steps. Now, they were poison to his children. I wanted to scream, "Your modern world was built on my old ways." But the words tangled in my throat. I lowered my gaze. "So, I am unfit to even speak to my grandchildren." He looked away. "Don't make it harder, Ma. Just, give us space. Give us space." The space I once filled with love was now too small for me to enter. If you believe no mother's wisdom should ever be silenced, please like this video. Let the voices of elders be valued again. I walked back home slowly, my shawl dragging through the dust. I sat in my chair, staring at the toys I had bought. They waited silently, colorful and bright, meant for small hands that would never touch them. The words "old ways" echoed in my ears, mocking me. I touched the deep lines on my face and whispered, "These are not old ways. These are survival. These are love. These are the roots you now reject." I thought my stories and lessons would always be treasures. But they called them outdated, and pushed me aside. His words "don't come anymore" echoed in my ears long after he closed the door. I stood there on the doorstep, the bag of sweets still in my trembling hands, as though my heart had dropped into the dust at my feet. I walked home slowly, my shawl dragging against the stones. By the time I reached my chair, my body ached, but not from the walk. It ached from betrayal. I closed my eyes and drifted back in time. I remembered when he was small. A thin boy with large, curious eyes. He was fragile, often falling sick. I would sit by his bedside all night, pressing cool cloths against his forehead, whispering prayers until the fever broke. I remembered the day a storm shook the roof of our home. He clung to me, crying, while the rain poured through the cracks. I spread my own sari over him, so he would stay dry, though I shivered with cold all night. I remembered selling my earrings to pay for his medicine. My ears still feel bare. But my heart had been full because my child's life mattered more than gold. I thought of his first day at school. He was afraid to let go of my hand, tears brimming in his eyes. I bent down, kissed his forehead, and said, "Be brave, Beta. Your mother will always be here, just beyond the gate." I stood there until the bell rang, watching, waiting, making sure he was safe. I remembered him running home with dusty feet, holding his report card high, shouting, "Ma, look." I passed. My heart had swelled with pride. Though I knew it was my long nights of work, my skipped meals, my sacrifices that made that passing grade possible, and now, that same boy now, a man looked at me as though I were an intruder in his life. If you believe no mother should be pushed away after giving everything for her child, please subscribe. Let her sacrifices be remembered. I looked at the bag of sweets, still unopened on the table. My hands trembled as I whispered, "These hands once fed you when I went hungry. These hands once carried you when you were too weak to walk. And now, these hands are not welcome to give sweets to my grandchildren." The words "don't come anymore" circled endlessly in my ears. Each repetition chipped away at my heart until it felt like dust. I thought my son would always remember the arms that raised him, but instead, he saw them only as shadows to keep away. The day was bright when I packed the small bag of sweets and toys. My wrinkled fingers tied the packets carefully with ribbon, each knot tied with love. I imagined the sparkle in my grandchildren's eyes when I handed them the gifts. I pressed my sari, combed my gray hair neatly, and whispered to myself, "Today, I will see their smiles. Today, my heart will be full again." When I reached my son's house, my steps were light with hope. But the door did not open with warmth. Instead, my son stood there, his face heavy, his eyes avoiding mine. "Ma," he said flatly, "don't come here anymore." The bag of sweets trembled in my hands. "Why, Beta?" I asked, my voice cracking. He shifted uncomfortably. "My wife doesn't want you around the children. She says it's better this way." His words fell like stones in my chest. The home I had once dreamed of filling with laughter now closed its doors on me. I thought my son's house would always welcome me, but I was wrong.